Hey everybody, this is Jeff Conti, your YouTube knife mentor. I want to talk to you today about preparing bolsters and a full tang knife for soldering. 40 years ago, that's the way it was done. Today, people are taking shortcuts, and I'm not saying their shortcuts are wrong or bad. I'm just saying that's not the way I learned how to do it. This is definitely stronger and more secure. I'm not saying it's a requirement for a strong and secure knife. I'm saying this is the way I learned how to do it, and I like it. So this is what I'm going to do. Also, my customers like it, so they like me doing it. So here we go. We're going to prepare bolsters and the knife. What I want to talk about first is determine the size of your pins and then drill your holes. That's not what I did. So I'm telling you to do it the way I'm telling you to do it, and don't do it the way I did it, because it's going to make you take more time to build pins if you drill the wrong size hole, or you drill a hole that's for a pin you don't have. So what I did is I decided what size of hole I want. I laid out my pinholes for the scales. I ground my knife. I heat treated it. I got it all ready to go. And then I got ready to put pins in, and I didn't have any pins that fit those holes. So I had to go down to the lathe, and I had to make 181 thousandths pins for 182 thousandths hole. Don't do that, extra time, and you might not have a lathe. So, if you look at my other video, I did a video about drill bits and reamers. You can go look at that. But you can't drill a 125 thousandths hole and put a 125 thousandths pin in it. You have to have a 126 thousandths hole for a 125 thousandths pin. So if you want, you can drill a 125 thousandths hole, and then you can sand this down a little bit with some sandpaper so that then it would fit into the hole. Instead of going down to the lathe and building new pins. Okay. So be precise, and you say, well, why bother being precise? Why not drill a 3/16 inch hole, 187.5, and use an 1/8 inch pin? Well, I'll tell you why. Because when you go to put your bolster on, you don't have any precision, and it's going to sit wonky. That's an official word, by the way. My wife said so. It's going to sit wonky on the knife. You have to have the right size holes, the right size pins, and everything has to line up and fit properly. Now you can see this isn't fitted properly, so I'm going to have to go down and clean out that hole. I haven't cleaned them yet. I just got them ready. So anyway, but you can see once I get it cleaned up, it's going to barely sit down on that pin and sit down on the knife handle. What you'll also see, and I'll just tell you ahead of time, because this knife handle is tapered, you will say, well, there's a gap at the bottom because this is drilled square, and these holes are drilled square, and you're right. So what I'm going to have to do on these inside holes is I'm going to have to open them up a little bit so that it will, instead of be sitting square with a big gap, it'll sit down flush on the knife tang. Okay, so be precise. Don't allow your pins to sit wonky, and you're going to be happy when you go to solder. Okay, dirty holes for your pins. Why is that? I'll tell you why. Because I don't want the pins, once I go to solder this, I don't want the pins soldered into the holes. All I want them for is locating. Why? Because what I'm going to do is, once it's soldered in place, I'm going to use 3 small spots of epoxy. I'm going to use my regular pins to locate my scales in place and fit them and everything. And then I'm going to let the epoxy cure, and I'm going to completely finish the handle. All shaped, ground, and flattened, and sanded, and finished all to size, and even the smoothness that I want. Once I'm all done and everything's fitted just perfect the way I want it, then I'm going to whack them on the top with a wooden mallet on both of these. They're going to pop off. And then I'm going to put my pins back in, and then I'm going to pin them in place. And you can see that I've removed some material on this side. so they won't be this thickness anymore. If I peen them the way they are now and then grind down, these pins will flop around loose in there. And I don't want that. I want these pins peened because it's another layer of structure to help hold these bolsters in place. I can't fathom the idea that one of my knife handle bolsters would get loose. I can't fathom that. So I solder them and I peen them. I do both. All right. That's why I use dirty holes, so I can take the pins out, so I can finish everything up, put them back in, and then peen them in place, and then sand them down, and then go and Cerakote my knife, the bolsters, the tang, everything all the way around, and then put my scales back on with my pins and get everything right, epoxy it all in place, and it's done. Okay? So you can see that these holes are not, anything special. I'm not trying to do make the holes look any particular way, because when the Cerakote goes on, you won't see them anyway. However, they do need to be, a modest difference of center from the top of your bolster to the bottom and left to right, so that they will be physically strong in the knife. Another good reason, and I don't think this is a great big deal, but if you have a nice strong pin with no gap in there, or very little gap in there, these holes would have a propensity to make a weak spot for a tactical knife. And so if these holes are fitted properly and everything is soldered in place, these holes no longer become a weak spot for the knife. So that's how to prepare your bolsters. I didn't say this, but be sure to flatten these on a piece of glass with some sandpaper, and then clean them properly with acetone, both your bolsters and the sides of your knife. But we're gonna go over actually soldering this in the next video. You're gonna see I'm going to tin these, so there's solder on these surfaces already, complete from all the way around it, covered with solder. I'm going to take most of that solder off with a file, and then I'm going to put them back in with the pins, and I'm going to put a vice grip on it. And then under tension, I'm going to heat up the bolsters, and the bolsters are going to transfer the heat to the knife, and then the solder is going to go liquid, and the vice grips are going to pinch together and take up the slack that the solder was holding, and these bolsters are going to get soldered to the knife handle. So that's everything in a nutshell. I want you to realize that this is probably more work than a lot of people would go to, but it's the way I do it, and if you want to do it this way, I'm going to try to help you. For now, this is Jeff Conti, your YouTube knife mentor. I want you to go out and have fun making a knife.